Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friends of the Force, a Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Brad.
And I'm your host, Sarah.
And this is Andor Candor, which is our exclusive series all about Andor. Every single week, we'll be here on the podcast talking about the newest episodes by ourselves or with guests. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, stick around for more. It's going to be a fun journey this season. We're talking about 3 episodes today. Good stuff. Sarah, Andor's out in the world. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm so happy that these episodes are out in the world so that we can all enjoy them and talk about them and stand the Time Grappler together as a fandom. But if this is the first Andor Candor episode you're listening to, make sure to hit pause. Wait, right now, but not right now. Give me 20 seconds and then right now. Because we had the opportunity to go to the launch event in Hollywood at the El Capitan Theater. And we did a whole episode about our experience there, our initial reactions, non-spoiler to the show. And if you want even more Andor goodness, I recommend that episode. And then we can jump into the spoilers, which we're going to do right now. Okay, if you need to go over there, you can pause now.
Yeah, that is our non-spoiler review. So we're not going to be really doing a non-spoiler thing up front today because we've already done that per se. And we're just going to really be jumping into it.
It's good.
So good. Sarah, you and I had decided after we saw the first 3 episodes at the El Capitan, we were going to wait till it dropped, rewatch all the episodes again, and then record. Because one, I was so overwhelmed I couldn't remember anything. Like half the stuff I watched today, I was like, oh my God, I forgot about that. Because I was just blacking out the whole time that I was watching it. Because I was like, I'm still recovering from seeing Diego Luna and Kathleen Kennedy in the same space. So that was a lot to handle. So we watched it with subtitles. I picked up a couple of things, and it is pockets are fomenting, not fermenting.
Yeah,
for
we
the
knew
record.
this. Come on, no, we knew this. We knew this. If you turned your captions on the trailer, yes, I turned my captions on the yes.
Okay. Maybe
I
you
turned
did.
on the trailer captions.
I was still skeptical. I'm a skeptic. So I was like, you know what? Maybe it's fermenting. Pockets can ferment too.
Because I even went and Googled the word foment. It was a whole thing. We had a conversation about this.
We did.
You just
on the podcast too. There's a record of it.
And you just had forgot.
I'm the editor,
This is why we do the podcast. So then Brad can remember the conversations we have. Otherwise, woof.
Regardless of fomenting, you know what is fermenting today is a wonderful conversation because we're going to talk about all 3 episodes. And I'm so excited.
I genuinely
lots of juicy stuff.
No idea if that was the correct use of the word fermenting, and I'm not entirely sure that it was, but we're just going to roll with it as if it was.
I know. I'm really, really trying here.
Because I Googled fomenting, but I didn't Google fermenting.
Yeah. Fermenting, it's to incite or to stir up. So yeah, that works.
We're gonna stir up a conversation about the episode. Okay, that worked. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Sure.
Why not? Okay, Sarah. From a spoiler perspective, how did you feel about the first 3 episodes? Getting 3 episodes versus 2 in retrospect. What's going through your mind now that you've seen Andor twice?
I think firstly, as much as I was kind of disappointed about the date change, I was so ready to have an Andor August, and yet, I think that waiting for all 3 episodes was absolutely the right choice. You really need all 3 to get the big picture of the beginning of the story and to understand where we're starting and where we're heading. So I think that was definitely the right choice. And I'm really glad we watched it again before we had a spoiler reaction conversation about it, because I was positive about it after watching it the first time, but I think I was also just stunned into silence in a lot of ways. I mean, we absolutely just stood outside the theater after seeing it going what do we do now? But I feel even more favorably about it after watching it again and kind of really thinking about the pieces of this story. So I feel really good about it. And I am looking forward to kind of getting in the nitty gritty of some of these things. And I don't even think we'll be able to have a good conversation about some of these things until the season is over and we're yeah, that's what they were looking to do, because there's such complexities to the systems, politics that they've created already in these first 3 episodes that don't even have to do directly with politics, because I know we're getting a Mon Mothma episode, I think, coming up next week.
Oh yes, episode 4.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel good about it. I'm glad we're talking about it now, is the too long didn't listen version of that comment. How about you?
Yeah, we said it on our non-spoiler episode, and I really do think that Andor is the microscopic look at Star Wars that we've always needed. This is a story about everyday people who are just kind of living their everyday lives. Like, we're literally just plopped into Ferrix and plopped into the idea of the what are they called? The organization that the Pre-Mor security inspection team, like what they're doing on Preox Morlana. So many things going on, like such a new world to understand. Like, we haven't really got a good understanding of like what the mid rim looks like during the age of the Empire, right? It's always been very centered around like planets like Yavin and Scarif and stuff in Rebels, which I think are more on the outer rim and inner rim. So it's fascinating to get this like new look at the galaxy and also have like characters at the heart of it. Like these first 3 episodes are like very Cassian focused, like where he's been and where he's going. I think the juxtaposition of his past and present worked really well. And it especially is like a huge gut punch at the end of episode 3 when we see him once again leaving the only home he's ever known.
Mm-hmm.
And the time that he's leaving Ferrix is by his choice and his choice alone, right? Because the first time he leaves Kenari, it's not really by his choice. Marva takes him, right? And so getting that emotional punch at the end, I think really bought me in, and I wanted to rewatch it all because I cried at the end of the 3rd episode in the theater. Guys, and I was like, am I just overcome with emotions?
Cried,
sobbing my eyes out.
That's not a dig. Like that's not me like saying that in a derogatory manner, but like you were like really touched by those last 10 minutes, like really emotional about it. And I don't think I was as dramatically. Like I've been like delightfully I've been delighted by the ways that people have reacted so emotionally to the end of that, because I totally get it. But yeah, seeing like sitting next to you and like seeing you experience that in real time was like very interesting in a positive way, not like in a bad way. I don't feel like I'm doing a good job of explaining that.
But. No, you're good. And I wanted to see like, would I have that same reaction at home? I'm like, Tony Gilroy, you're not going to get me now. And lo and behold, I'm in my basement watching this, crying my eyes out again. And I'm like, God damn it. I'm like turning up the volume so I can get the full range of the music and Nicholas Bertel's score in my ear holes. Like, cause the music there is like as much of a character as Cassian and Marva is. Sure. when we see their past and present together. And I don't know, maybe it's because I moved a lot growing up, and so seeing Cassian sort of displaced and having to leave home somehow resonated with me. And also we know that like him leaving Ferrix is like the beginning of this journey that is going to eventually end on Scarif. Like for him, I don't think he'll come back to Ferrix, to be honest with you. I don't think he'll be back. I think this is his last time leaving. Maybe he sees Marva again. I could be wrong, but like it really felt like this is the beginning of the journey that's going to end with his sacrifice. So buckle up, because and I think that also was causing the emotions of like knowing what was about to come for him as a character.
Sure, because it doesn't end exactly happily for him. He doesn't live a long and full life, but he certainly lives one of meaning. So yeah, no, those last 10 minutes are brutal.
Yeah. Can we talk about Cassian for a little bit and sort of like what propels him? No, we're not going to talk about Andor at all. Cassian Andor. Actually, on the Andor Candor. Okay. Yeah. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in.
No. Don't turn people away. This is the Time Grapplers episode. We're talking about the Time Grappler.
Whoa.
We love a confident king. We love somebody who is, really good at his job. Provides an essential function for his town. And makes some great music in the process.
I will say every chicken across the world that wakes up any farmer should be replaced by a time grappler. I'm telling you, there's an entire like untapped job market there. Like, how many time grapplers could we use in the world? A lot, probably.
Honestly, we will talk more about the time grappler later because I have so much to say about this character who does not say a thing. Okay. Go ahead. Let's talk about Cassian. Sarah, stop talking.
I want to talk about like when we first meet Cassian in the show, because I think it's really interesting compared to how we first meet him in Rogue One. By the way, like the intro for this show is so damn good. Like the devastating like music, like it's sort of like a somber theme, but it also gets kind of inspirational towards the end.
Yeah, but
the rebellion
also
logo flips.
Aggressive Blade Runner vibes.
Yeah. Also the aggressive drums, like the drum solo that's just in there, just going hard as hell. I love it. I love it. But when we open episode 1, we see Cassian like in a rush. He's going to the bar, trying to find out information on his sister. And then he leaves and he's confronted by these Pre-Mor soldiers or these security officers. And he ends up killing one accidentally. And that sort of leaves him with the choice to kill the other. And like in Rogue One, we are presented with a Cassian who kills his best friend, one of his close friends, in an order to escape the situation that he's in. So it's like both these times that we meet Cassian, he's making the choice to kill. I think like in this instance, he seems very hesitant at first. He seems like it's not something he wanted to get himself into, but he sort of was left with no choice. Whereas in Rogue One, he feels like calm and like sure in the way that he kills Tivik.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just interesting. I don't really know like what it says about his character, but I think it just maybe says that he's about to go through some stuff that makes him hardened and makes it easier to make those choices and like without any hesitation.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair assessment to make. Like, this is not you can tell it's not a choice he wants to make. And he's a little alarmed, or not a little, he is alarmed when he finds out that the first corporate person is dead, just because of their short fight. And so it's never a decision he wanted to make, but it's one he had to make for his own survival. And it's one that kind of propels him on this journey. And it makes you wonder, because of how he hesitated, like, has he killed before? What has his life been like, you know, from the time that he was 10 or so, whatever, in the show? I know we've been talking about fights at 6 years old, but that's not a 6-year-old boy. Like that's like a 10 or 12-year-old. But like, you know, from the Kassa that we see to Cassian now, has he been living a peaceful life, or has he been putting himself in risky situations in his own ways? And I mean, that's something we might not find out necessarily in the series, and that's okay. But it does make you wonder whether he's had to kill like this before.
And I think the rest of the episode, he's sort of living with those consequences, which is why I think this is the first time he has killed. Because he has a prison record or like a jail record of before, I believe, because like Cyril is pulling up his old records. So he's been in the system before, which I think we will see in that sort of like THX 1138-esque footage that we've seen in trailers.
Ooh,
I think that's maybe like
flashback?
his prison breakout. Yeah, I think that's like a prison breakout. Which would be interesting. Okay. Yeah, because we know he has an Imperial record of sorts. But yeah.
Can we talk about the setting a little bit?
Yeah, you're talking about Morlana 1.
Yeah. So we get those aggressive Blade Runner vibes that he's walking into. And then he's like walking down this, you know, kind of grimy street where we've got very much like red light district, people in the windows situation. And then he walks into a brothel. Like, this is not just a bar, my friend. This is a brothel.
I don't know about you, but as soon as I saw him walk down that street and go into the brothel and you just hear that club music playing, I was like, this is not Star Wars. I was like, this is so different and I love it. I was like, this is it. I'm in. Like, it took me like not even 2 minutes to be bought into the show.
It's jarring, and not necessarily in a bad way, but it's not what you'd expect. That's for sure. You know, like, it's maybe something you would expect in like The Expanse, or even variations on Trek, right? Like this sort of world aesthetic, but not in Star Wars. And it was really interesting to kind of walk into this space and kind of immediately understand the context of the space. And also the woman who he talks to, she looks like 3 other actresses. Am I wrong? She looks like the one girl from Sex Education who also looks like Margot Robbie. I'm not wrong about this, guys. I can't be the only one who saw this.
I feel like she looked like somebody, but I couldn't place my finger on
that.
It.
That is who you're thinking of. It's like the one girl from Sex Education and Margot Robbie, because they look fairly similar. Anyway, she's not either of these people, to be clear.
Yeah. I will say too, like in terms of this sort of underworld Blade Runner vibe, I mean, we have gotten bits of that with like the underbelly of Coruscant and Attack of the Clones, like sort of the neon landscape and like the dark gambling kind of bar scene. We get a little bit of that too, I think, in The Rise of Skywalker. Like this actually reminded me a bit of Kijimi like with the, you know, the speakeasy that John Williams is bartending at, and
iconic,
that sort of crowd. So that's what I immediately picked up on there. But yeah, it's really fascinating. I can't wait to learn more about this world and like sort of where its place is within the empire. That's like another thing too that I think I'm trying to get a grapple on, is like what the political looks like in the series, because we know that like Primor is like this sort of hub of the empire, this like first line of defense. I believe at one point Linus Moss, who's one of the other officers, refers to it as like corporate tactical forces, like being the first line of defense, and that they sort of fit into that scheme. And then like Ferrix is within their sort of area that they
jurisdiction
monitor. Yeah, jurisdiction. So that's all fascinating, and I'm excited to like peel back those layers a little bit and see like, once the Empire does get involved, like does the hammer come down? Can Cyril Karn like not complete the mission that he was supposed to? And now there's like this rebel spy potentially who's going to be created out of it, you know, like a fulcrum agent, because Andor got
I love how we see this pathetic man who is so uptight about this one particular problem, and we're like, redemption arc. But yeah, it's very interesting, and that's what I'm talking about in saying like up top when I was like, yeah, I don't know if we'll be able to really have a thoughtful conversation about some of these politics and some of the way that this all works until the series is over and we kind of have a better picture of the world that he's painting. Because we were talking to Charlotte and Caitlin at the Sky Talkers, and she's like, it took us a minute to figure it out, and so basically the Empire's at the top, and then these guys are in the middle, and then Ferrix is kind of at the bottom. They're kind of hands off, and nobody wants the other person to like encroach on their day to day, and everybody's going to start doing that. I was like, genius. I didn't even pick up on that. I didn't even realize that like that Cyril, you know, like in the trailers and stuff, I recognize that they're wearing different uniforms, but like I didn't even realize that they were not specifically Empire.
Mm-hmm.
So this is all very new to me.
And it's interesting too. It's a very intentional choice to not show any Imperial logos until I believe in the middle of the second episode or towards the end, when Cassian unwraps the device he's going to bring to Luthen, and he like kind of turns it over in his hands, and we finally see the Empire's logo. That's the first time in the series, which I love. I like them kind of keeping those curtains closed until like the right moment, and then it sort of all clicks into place, and you go, oh, okay, there are larger things that are happening. Cassian is involved. And the whole funny thing about this all is, right, like Cyril's inability to let this go, and like his fear that he has, like the worst thing you could do is doing nothing at all sort of attitude, might get him into more trouble than he realized, because it's going to put eyes on him, eyes on Cassian, and eyes on like, how did Cassian get this device that was, according to Luthen Rail, you know, sealed in these vaults somewhere. So like, how did he get those? Specifically, they're the what is it here? The Imperial Naval Base on Steerguard, which I was like, ooh, I like that.
Great name.
Kind of cool.
You know, what I just had in my head here, and maybe a small portion of our audience will get this, but like, Cyril Karn is Javert, and Cassian Andor is Valjean, and this is Les Miserables. But seriously though, because like Javert in Les Miserables is just like single-mindedly on this quest to continue to punish Valjean, because he believes that's what's right and just, and like that's what he has to do with an officer of the law. And like, I mean, Valjean stole a loaf of bread. Cassian Andor did kill 2 men, but like that's beside the point a little bit. Like this antagonist is on a very narrow-minded quest over time. And I find that to be very interesting. It's like touch grass, Cyril Karn, you know?
I am like always pro redemption in Star Wars. I think I can say the same for you. The moments that Cyril and Cassian had that moment in episode 3 where the blaster comes, and you see like Cassian's you see his like blaster kind of like click apart when he like cocks it. I love how that looked, by the way, like such a small detail. His blaster is so cool. But the way he's like, put down the weapon, give me your comm, and he stomps on it. I was like, oh, these guys are going toe to toe for the rest of the series, and it's gonna end in a partnership. Like I do think Cyril Karn will become a Fulcrum agent at some point. Like I think these two are gonna be helping each other out. I think he's gonna really start to have these hard pills to swallow once the Imperial leadership encroaches on his territory and like kind of shows him who's actually boss, and he's gonna be like, oh shit, I don't belong here. So we'll see.
I keep going back and forth on that, because like on the one hand, I'm very much redeem everybody, like I don't care, it's fiction, like everybody, you know, if we can imagine acts of redemption for the worst people in our fiction, like, you know, I think it gives us a broader imagination to forgive one another, but like, you know, that's beside the point, but like redeem everybody.
They're giving Aang and Zuko vibes. Like Zuko cannot catch Aang. He always gets away. And right, like here it is,
Valjean, Javert, Zuko, Aang. Great. These are great.
Cyril Kron's like, oh, I got Andor. We got him, guys. Like, hurrah. And he freaking zips out on a speeder right behind him, and like the look on his face and getting to see how he reacts to that for so long, like the close up on him, like we sit with him in that moment. We get to really see how the gears are turning in his mind. Like he is like not doing good at the end of the episode.
Right. And I go back and forth on whether I think he's going to be redeemed. Like either he's going to hit a breaking point with the Empire and be like, wait, WTF, what are we here for? What is the point? This is not helping anybody. Or he's gonna dig in his heels so much it ends in his death, which is perhaps like the more likely outcome. But like he's gonna dig in his heels. He's gonna be like, you know, this is my life's work. My life's mission is to catch a single man. And I go back and forth on what's gonna happen in this story to him, because he's pretty pathetic. Let's be really clear right now. He's really pathetic. And while he was giving his motivational speech, people in the audience were laughing. It was great. It was very funny. He's kind of a comedy king.
Of laughter.
He's kind of a comedy king when his boss at Primor is like, what did you do to your uniform? And he's like, piping, pockets, a little bit of tailoring. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, he's pathetic. I love him.
He's such a loser.
He's such a loser. And I think we're talking so much about him. And I know we're not the only ones, because of Kyle Solar's performance. And like, let's talk about the actor here. He is really, really giving this character so many layers and such specificity in his portrayal. You can see the different emotions in his eyes. You know, some people's eyes, you really can't see behind them. That is a man whose eyes you can see way behind, all the way to the back of the skull. Like, holy moly. The end of episode 3, as you were just mentioning, that man has never experienced more devastation than in that moment.
Yeah, speeder blows up. You hear like people wailing in pain in the background, and all he can do, like his Linus Mosk is just shaking him. He's like, soldier, like we gotta go, we gotta get out of here. He literally yanks his collar to get him to move, right? Kyle Solar's performance, you hit the nail on the head. Like I feel this just like gravitational pull towards the character because of that. Like I'm just like, I recognize like he is playing it to such a like fine specificity that like I almost like can't describe it. It's just this like do-gooder, brown noser, try harder like sort of guy who like his posture is great, his stuff is very tailored.
He's incredibly clean shaven. Yeah,
we got to figure this out. Like I am by the books, and he's trying to lead this group of people, and nobody clearly respects him because every order he gives, he gets some sort of pushback from his direct reports, right? And
nobody takes
looks up to
their job as seriously as he does.
Right.
He is so uptight about it. It's really incredible to watch. Like,
yeah, he's like everybody around him is sort of like the bare minimum worker. They're like, listen, dude, I'm getting paid minimum wage. I'm just showing up here for work so I can go home and live my life. And he's like, no, I want the extra credit. Like, I want the promotion.
It's not even that. It's more like, I read the handbook twice over and I follow every rule to the T. And like, if you somebody who's working at the same level as me are breaking a rule, I am going to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's kind of like that guy, you know, where sometimes it's like, okay, the handbook like doesn't really matter. You kind of just learn and you go. But he's like, I don't give a shit if the handbook doesn't matter. Like you wrote it, you know, like
he's
like
the guy who would recite the exact passage number and exact sentence of like a rule. Yeah.
This is a citation. Yeah. So anyway, obsessed with this pathetic man.
Kyle said is somebody that you're going to love to hate, which is so accurate.
Yeah. And I'm really curious to see which path his character goes and how much more we see of him throughout the season. Because he's just it's hard to take your eyes off of him. Diego Luna, very handsome, a great actor. We love him. We love Rogue One. You know, Stellan Skarsgård, an icon all by himself. Like,
amazing.
You know, Adria Arjona is just kind of electric to watch. And yet I find myself watching this pathetic bad guy, you know, like, and I recognize that this is like a Pro Reylo podcast. We really enjoy our Kylo Ren. He's also a little bit pathetic. So this is not exactly like off brand for us.
We love Elzar Mann, also pathetic, but a good guy.
He's a good guy. Yeah.
He's just pathetic.
Right. I love him. So this is not off brand for us, but I just found his performance to be really standout in these 3 episodes. And I think we should definitely acknowledge that. Like he's really doing the most here. And I think he's also given the most screen time to do the most, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm just so fascinated to better understand where he's going. And since we're talking about them, I would like a couple, I would like to just share a great line from this one, which is like, we have one suspect. How many men should we bring? And Linus Moss is like, about 12, sir. Like,
oh boy.
And I just felt like I really needed to say that out loud.
Just to be prudent, right?
Right.
Yeah, this show definitely has some subtle jabs at the need for our society to over militarize civilian situations. They're like, oh, that's one guy. I love how they're like, you know, they're on Ferrix and they're like, they see the explosion from the one guy who goes up in the ship and one of the workers attached the thing to it and he like blows up. And then we go back to Linus Moss and he's like, oh my God, they're behind us. We're surrounded. They're everywhere. And it like goes back to Cassian and Luthen and they're just like in a garage and they're just like, where are we?
Right.
Like all these guys think they're like really armed, really dangerous. They got explosives. They're like, oh guys, we got to get them. And they're just 2 clueless guys who are like, where's the speeder? Where do we go? I don't know.
It is the us versus them and the excessive force of it all, you know.
Right. And even too, like the situation with Timon, when he comes down the stairs and he sees Bix in trouble, bleeding, right? And they shoot on sight. He's not armed at all. He's just concerned for Bix and he gets shot, which, you know, one would say like, you know, mess around and find out.
Let's be very, very clear about his motivations. He was jealous.
Yeah, there's that.
That Cassian, that he felt like he didn't have full ownership, may not be the right word, but full attentions of Bix. And he knew something and he snitched.
A little bit of toxic masculinity, if you ask me.
A whole lot of toxic masculinity.
Sure.
Bix seems to be somebody who can handle herself. And Cassian and Tim, they are both grown men who can handle themselves. If this is the arrangement that they had, you know, all independently figured out, then by all means, go for it. But no. Tim had to be a jealous little bitch. I do have a problem with this, actually.
Yeah, no, I totally have a problem with him as well. I think just in like the scope of like the police and like sort of scope,
I'm not saying he deserved to die. I'm not somebody who thinks that way, but like, I just wanted to be
consequences
clear
of like what his behaviors and his thought processes led to, right? And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate it led him there. But also, yeah, he's a little bit of a bitch. A lot of a bitch.
I am not a Tim 2M's fan. I am not. It gives me bad vibes. And I felt sad for Bix when he died, but not only did he betray Cassian, he betrayed her and her trust.
Yeah.
And then he like slept with her.
Yeah, the whole situation is just terrible, and I think too, like her emotions when he dies is not only her losing somebody that she's deeply cared about, but also like a huge sense of betrayal of like, look what your betrayal of our trust and of all of that has caused. You know, like you broke the trust. Like you're one of the only people I've told about Cassian being from Canary, and you broke that trust. I trusted you, and I feel foolish. I feel bad because now Cassian is threatened, right? And we sort of see that at the end of the third episode. Like we see how all these lives have been affected by that decision to rat out on Cassian, right? Like Marva. We see, I believe his name is Brasso, who's like his worker friend. We get close-ups of them. We get close-ups of Bix. I think that's sort of the tragedy of these first 3 episodes is like this way of life is disrupted for everybody. And so it's like, where do they move forward and like what choices do they make in order to keep surviving and to keep looking out for one another. So what is Star Wars without its tragedy, right?
Ouch.
Yeah. I do want to make one note before we sort of talk about like Ferrix as a community, because I think it's a really interesting one that you and I have talked about. I want to talk about like the cinematography of the show and sort of like the prestige cinematic feel for it. And I think that's best exhibited during the scene before Cassian kills those 2 officers. Right when he leaves the bar, we get this like really close-up shot of him just like walking towards the camera. And it took me until today, like taking out the emotions of the premiere and everything, to realize like it was one continuous take from the moment he is walking up until the moment that the guards take off his hood. So it's about 2 minutes of like uninterrupted close-up on Diego Luna's face, getting to see him act, getting to see him react to what they're saying and what they say they want to do to him, and how many credits they want from him, and like, oh, it's the perfect amount for you to get out of that fine, right? And you see all these different realizations dawning on him in terms of like what he's going to have to do to get out of the situation, and like, oh crap, I actually got caught here in this moment. Like, what am I supposed to do? But I think it's like a little bit of a way of how the show is trying to be bold in its filmmaking and the way that it shows things on the screen.
Especially considering Mandalorian is about a guy who wears a mask and is not allowed, therefore, to emote with his face. Yes. I also just think that a really kind of vital part of the cinematography route, and we're going to talk about Ferrix here in a second, is just, the color and the scope of it all, and what the creatives are choosing to highlight as important, and they're choosing to highlight a lot of, for lack of a better word, like mundane ideas and mundane things presented in a beautiful manner, which really kind of makes the world feel all that much richer. And I think that's what I really get from, the cinematography, on top of, the choice to kind of do this long tracking shot, in addition to, kind of follow these characters in different ways throughout this space. We are just kind of getting the space in a different way in itself, which is great.
And I will say, like, long tracking shots, like, they're not like, groundbreaking, but I always respect shows that do that, because I feel like it really like invests me in the moment, and like I can't take my eyes off the screen because I want to read every piece of what's happening, right? But yeah, totally, like with the way that Ferrix is shot, and I think that's really exhibited at the beginning of episode 2 once the time grappler comes into the picture.
The time grappler!
We get the sounds of the time grappler alongside these shots of the everyday folk closing down for the night, right? That those 2 kids, or the 2 guys, like closing down the shop where Bix called for Luthen, and we see the junkyard guy closing down with his 2 hounds, right? So we get all these kind of moments to show just everyday life, and like you said, like more mundane, but I think it makes the world feel richer. It makes it have more personality than just like not including a small moment like that. And I think that's where like the pace of the show is really well done. It's a little bit slower, more deliberate, and it gives us time to understand these places that we're in.
Yeah, and I think that the way that the Time Grappler is shot, where we're kind of following him up the stairs and then we're seeing him from an upward angle to where we can recognize that he's in a tower of sorts and looking down along the city is really interesting too, because it sets up this world as like super populated and it sets up like this guy as doing something really essential. I could talk more about the Time Grappler, but I will let you stop me if you want to.
No, let's talk about it here while we're on it. I will say, like, the first time he showed up, you could get this sort of rustling sense of everybody in the theater like, oh my God.
Would you like to share my reaction?
I think you, I, and Tori Fox all like put our fists in the air, like we were ready.
No, I had like my fists up. I was like leaning forward, and under my mask, I was just like, yes. If it would have been socially acceptable to scream and yell, I would have. Like, that's my Super Bowl. Like, I love that guy. I was so fascinated by him from the moment that trailer dropped. Go back and listen to those reactions, because truly, but like, oh my God, the thrill I got upon watching that scene unfold in with among other people and with Nicholas Bertel in the audience. Let's be real clear here. The Time Grappler, that instrument, right? Like, we can assume that it looks like it's made with Beskar, to be really honest with you, at least his mallets.
Yeah, it kind of does.
But like, can we take this opportunity to talk about the music?
Yeah,
we have
please.
No direction here. Can we just talk about the music?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the way, oh my God, you guys. So when you kind of think about film, right? There's music, or there are music and sounds that exist within the scene and the world that we're in, and there are music and sounds that exist outside of the scene and the world that we're in. For instance, like the diegetic sounds of the blasters firing and the wind rustling, or the us walking on grass as we walk through the scene, versus like John Williams' score of it all, which exists for the audience, but not for the characters. This scene does one of like my favorite things in the world, is where we mix what is typically, the diegetic sounds with the Time Grappler, telling the time with his instrument, with the music, as they like very seamlessly blend, as you were talking about earlier, as we get those mini scenes of people moving throughout, shutting down their days and kind of moving on with their evenings. It goes directly into this beautiful, like ethereal, atmospheric music. And I lost my freaking mind. I was like, this is it. This is capital C cinema. It really, like, nothing makes me happier when you kind of see something that's a little off the beaten path happen in a story like that, where these sounds come together. What the audience is hearing and what the characters are hearing becomes the same thing. And I loved that. And it happens a little bit again in the morning, when we kind of get the morning Time Grappler grapple in. But also just like the music throughout. It is off the charts insane. I am obsessed. Give me the soundtracks now.
We're hearing drums.
Oh my God, not just drums, like a drum kit.
Heard drums?
Like somebody sitting down at the drum kit, like
going hard on the drums. Like, we have never heard that before. I remember end of episode 2, you and I were like, oh. We were kind of like bumping our heads. We were like, okay. And they like let the music play out.
Simultaneously a WTF and like, holy shit, this is amazing.
Yeah,
we were all like vibing, actually,
bobbing our heads. Yeah, we were in the club on a Thursday for sure. But like, Nicholas Bertel is bringing such a new taste to the Star Wars soundscape, and I'll be curious to see, like, once we get into more of the rebellion, like, do we hear some of those more classical Star Wars themes, and does he still blend those together with his specific style of music, right? But I love where it is so far. I love what we're getting. I cannot wait to listen back to the score, and especially, again, like the end of episode 3. I think it's one of the most beautiful pieces of Star Wars music I've heard. It's so good. Like, just from a thematic standpoint, a visual standpoint, it all blends together so perfectly because of that music, and because of the way that the camera moves, and the camera moves away from our characters and up close to our characters and behind our characters and in front of our characters. It's just so perfectly done. So hats off to Nicholas Bertel. My God, like, what a grab for the show.
Right. And if you want to go back to listen to some like beautiful Nicholas Bertel music, nothing sings more beautifully and more clearly than Agape from If Beale Street Could Talk, directed by Barry Jenkins. If you watch that, if you listen to that piece with the accompanying scene, I think that is just an excellent taste of the kind of work that he does. Because again, it's one of those moments where the music is non-diegetic, but you just feel it for this character as you're staring right into their eyes and just like understanding the warmth of the piece. And I really think we, get that at the end of episode 3 is like the warmth of the story. And there's also heartbreak in it with Marva, but like emotionality to like, I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to declare it a word, but there's this emotionality to the music that I feel like only Nicholas Britell can bring in his own way. And I'm so excited to see that applied to Star Wars and to this story. And did you have a favorite of the 3 openings of the Andor theme over the 3 episodes?
Ooh, I would say probably the 3rd one.
Ooh, mine's the 2nd.
Yeah.
Mine's the 2nd.
Yeah. 2nd would also be a close choice for me. I don't know. I'm just really shilling for that 3rd episode. It's honestly
that's valid.
One of the best episodes of Star Wars TV, especially live action TV. So yeah, it's so good.
Thrilling. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Here's a thought I have. Did you find yourself just a little bit like Upsetio Spaghettio that the scene that they decided to show before the premiere of this show, both in IMAX and for the Andor preview on Disney Plus, was the climax of these 3 episodes? Because
yeah,
okay, so at the premiere, I was like, I figured out at a point, like I was like, oh, we're leading up to this scene. We have to get to the scene before these 3 episodes are out. And I almost wish it had been saved. I don't know what other scene you could have pulled, to be honest with you, but I almost wish it had been saved because I was like, it's so thrilling and so exciting. And like, I think it could have been even more impactful if like none of us had seen it beforehand.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That would be the one thing I could change. You're talking the scene between Luthen and Cassian where Cassian's like, do you have my money or do you not have my money? That's the question.
Right. And he's like, Cassian Andor.
Cassian Andor.
Thank you. So much better than mine.
Without doing the
right.
Cassian
Andor. You had to do it every time.
No, I think a better scene that they could have showcased maybe would have been the bar scene in the beginning because it's like right up front. It was a little disappointing to see like, oh, that is actually a pretty critical point in this 3 episode arc. And also to not even just show the conversation, but also like the action afterwards. Cause I think the action like doesn't do itself justice, like watching it on like a YouTube video, or because, like on your phone or whatever.
The action, I saw that on an IMAX screen and I was like, oh my gosh, the way that set moves is just absolutely brilliant. And like, the way that it all falls apart is so great. And I mean, I'm glad I got to see it on the big screen. No complaints from me there, but I'm just surprised that that's the one they chose is I guess the point I'm getting at, because it ultimately like is the crux. It's the very clear turning point of the first hour and a half of this story. So I just found it to be a little surprising.
But I will say I do love what this show has been willing to give us ahead of time and like to say and like reveal, because so many other shows have been really close to the vest beforehand. So I do admire it, but I'm also at the same time I'm like, oh, hold it back because I like surprises. But then when I don't get the surprises and I don't get the early looks, I'm like, I want more. It's always a damned if you do, damned if you don't, I guess. It depends on my mood.
And to be clear, like I totally do agree with you when it comes to this show not really being all about the mystery box, and we know exactly where it ends. We know where the show is going to end and the story is going to end. He's like, yeah, it's going to be him walking a Tivik. And I'm like, great. Yeah. like I really don't have any qualms with that.
Love that.
And so I find it to be really interesting that we're getting so much information about it. I'm certainly not complaining because it also provides more. It provides the actors with more space to talk about their characters and the stories that they're going on, without like the oh, well, I guess they're going to have to wait and see, anytime anytime anybody asks a question on a press tour, they've actually been able to give some interesting answers about their characters.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, in the Adria Arjona roundtable that, many of our friends and peers were on, somebody asked her a question about Bix and her storyline, and she said something along the lines of, she's going to have to decide whether she sees this happen and wants to go after somebody she cares about, or, stays a shopkeeper. And I went, oh, is she going to leave Ferrix? Is she going to leave Ferrix? Kind of hope so. If she goes after Cassian, that'd be really interesting. But yeah, I like that we're able to talk about this one more.
My favorite quote from her so far is Hollywood Reporter asking her, what's your favorite episode? And she goes, episode 1. And they're like, you're good at this. And she's like, you'll just have to watch. Like, she is so media trained. It's great. She's like, I'm ready for any question you throw my way.
Right.
And I will say too, like, I'm so intrigued to learn, like, what's her connection with Luthen? Like, how did they get in cahoots with each other?
Who's
right.
Because, like, who's Luthen?
I have a tinfoil hat theory here.
Okay.
Well, okay. Actually, my Bix theory is that she is actually already like part of the rebellion. Like she is like in the early grassroots with those two guys who own the shop.
Yeah, they're good guys for sure.
Because when they rescue her at the end, they're like, we got to go, and they take her and they just like run off with her, right? So like they were very adamant to find her. So maybe those three are all together like part of a very secret insurgent cell. Maybe not like rebellion, like full on rebellion, because it might not be formed yet. But I think they are part of like a local cell of people who are trying to connect with others like Luthen. Luthen, like while we're talking about him and that whole scene, by the way, the action again, it's just so good.
So good.
I love it. I love it. I almost feel like, I'm always thinking like meta perspective. I feel like all those things falling down from the ceiling, a little bit of divine intervention for the galaxy to say, no, this is not your path. We're going to keep blocking you from getting it.
Such a fragile atmosphere that it's a house of cards in its own sense. And I think that it also can symbolize Cassian's life thus far as just being built on a patch of sand as opposed to a patch of rock, or whatever, bringing up the Bible. Right. But like, his life is so flimsily built at this point that he does one thing and it really sets him on a path that he has to go through with because there's no other options for him. So
Cassian tells him, I got this because you just walk in like you belong, which I wonder if we will see him get that device at some point.
Well, now you've made me wonder with the Empire scenes, he is not bearded. To be clear, no beard Cassian is in those Empire scenes. Is that the origin story of that thing? Is the question.
I think we might see it. I'd be curious, but I love how he says, they're so fat and satisfied. They can't imagine that someone like me would get inside their house, walk their floors, spit in their food, take their gear. And then Luthen tells him their arrogance is remarkable. They don't even think about us. And then he also talks about this voice, I guess, that rings in your ear. He's like, someday that voice will stop. It's the voice that tells you to stop, to go, to move, to die, right? He's like, eventually that voice will stop. And I do think of Cassian on the beach as a Scarif, right? That I wonder, is that voice finally silenced when the Death Star blasts? Is that voice still with him? That voice that just keeps telling him to go, go, go. It really seems like Cassian at this point in his life and what we see his life on Ferrix looking like, everything is falling apart for him, right? Like not just the warehouse they're in, but like his social life is falling apart, right?
Yeah.
People are saying like, look, dude, this is your last chance. You owe me money. You come around the junkyard too often and you hide in these ships and you take the stuff, right? You are on your last leg. I'm giving you one final chance. Hell, even Marva is like, how do people know you're from Kenari?
Right.
How did that happen?
How many people have you
right?
told? Yeah.
So everything, House of Cards is a great metaphor, actually, now that you said it. Like that is what it is, right? Like every single chance that he's had, like all the chances are spent, as Jen Erso would say, right? So
right. The other thing I was thinking about while we're kind of talking about this end scene with Luthen and Cassian, and this derails a bit from Cassian, but I want to take a moment to mention the old guy on the train.
Yes, who is that?
Who is the actor?
Yeah, I thought that was like somebody who played like a doctor on Doctor Who or something. I'm like, this guy looks like he's been in Doctor Who. I don't know.
You know what?
Anyways.
I showed my mom a picture of somebody and I can't remember who. And she was like, oh yeah, he's my favorite doctor. And I was like, this man has not been on Doctor Who, Mom.
He looks like he's been in Doctor Who.
If I had a nickel that every time somebody in my life was like, yeah, I love that guy on Doctor Who, I'd have 2 nickels. It's not a lot, but it's certainly weird. Like this was in the last couple of days too. This is funny.
Looks like he just walked straight out of the Whoverse with his top hat and his suitcase. I don't know.
Maybe I'm just clowning. Like maybe he has been on Doctor Who. I wonder if it's about the same guy.
Would not be surprised if he whisked away Luthen and Cassian in a freaking blue police box at the end of the episode.
You know, I have no sense of time. I really wonder. I really wonder if this was the same guy my mom was talking about. Was he on Doctor Who and I'm actually the clown? It's me? I feel like I have to get to the bottom of this. Guys, I will update you on whether this guy was on Doctor Who or not. But he gives Doctor vibes, that's for sure. But he's like literally like a traveling sales person who like you'd find in a scene like that takes place, a quaint little scene that takes place on the London Underground. And he's like, oh, lovely day we're having. You know, don't you think? And that's like the total vibes he gives off. And that felt so un-Star Wars to me in the best way. I was like, and I love that he's wearing like a Bluetooth earpiece. Like please,
oh
the vibes of this guy were immaculate.
Oh boy, I love him.
I was really living for it.
Got a little bit of like a curly mustache too at the ends. He was really living his best life. I hope he's like having a good day.
Yeah. Oh, also while we're talking about, I mentioned the hat. Can we talk a second about the costumes designed by Michael Wilkinson throughout this?
Yeah, sure.
Because the costumes, we're really going all over the place. Sorry to the people. But the costumes are so interesting because they're really colorful. Do you agree? Are they colorful?
Yeah. I mean, especially Ferrex, like the workers' uniforms, and we get that one shot of all the gloves that are on the wall. I think Bix's clothing especially is pretty vibrant, like with the green and the yellow. By the way, she's giving big Jen Erso energy with the scarf, I gotta say.
Right.
Something about Star Wars and scarves. I just love it so much. Also like the Time Grappler, he's wearing like kind of like an dark orange or dark red sort of a suit. The workers, they got like orange and yellow. Like there definitely is a lot of color happening. So like even in the junkyard, like there's color, and especially too like B2 Emo with the yellow wheel and the red droid body, which I remember somebody in our screening was like, why does he have a yellow wheel? I was like, what are we doing this right now? We're watching this. That was so random. But when they said that too, I was thinking of like C-3PO, who's like the inverse of B2 Emo, right? He's got like a gold body and the red arm, whereas B2 Emo has a red body and the gold/yellow wheel. So he's like the inverted C-3PO.
Okay, let's talk about B2 Emo. But before we do that, I would like to share that this actor, I believe, is Ron Cook. And Ron Cook has, am I right that this is Ron Cook? I think so.
Yes, it is Ron Cook. Yes.
Okay. He has not been in Doctor Who, at least on IMDb. So he's got the vibes. You and my mom are not wrong about that, but you are wrong. He has
been in The Witcher. He has been in Les Mis, the mini TV series in 2019. So we're connecting all the dots.
It's all coming back around.
Yes. Yep.
But let's talk a little bit about like B2 Emo and Ferrex, because we were talking outside the theater and we were like, hey guys, what is B2 Emo going to sound like? Place your bets, $0. And I was like, I think he's going to have a low kind of rumble, because I was like, maybe he's got treads. And I was wrong. And I was so happy to be wrong. I've never been happier to be wrong than when like that little droid opened its non-existent mouth and started talking with his sweet baby stutter. And he has to use his power to lie. Oh, precious. Are you in love with B2 Emo?
I am. B2 Emo, happy to say, is voiced by Dave Chapman, who is a puppeteer, actually. He's worked on Star Wars in the past, including Rogue One, and every episode of the sequel trilogy. So he's the one that's bringing B2 to life. I love B2. I love his stutter that he has, which I feel like is probably, from the passage of time, and, his parts are wearing down a little bit. I love how Cassian has this like devotion, not only to B2 Emo, where he is, taking out the little piece of metal from his plating in the beginning. He's like, "Oh, hell, here you go, little buddy. I'm taking this out for you." Right? It's like taking the needle out of the lion's paw sort of moment. But Cassian also has like a devotion to Marva. Like when he's talking to B2 Emo at the end of episode 3, he's like, "Hey." He's like, "Are you there? Are you there? Listen, just tell Marva I'm sorry. Also remind her to keep the heat on. You know how cold she gets, right?" And I'm just like, oh my God, like Cassian. And again, that the juxtaposition between like the the police guys being like, "Cassian Andor, he's armed and dangerous," and then Cassian's on the radio being like, "Hey, Marva gets really cold. Like, give her a blanket every now and then." Like, what?
Right?
What? Who are you even chasing?
Right.
But I love the relationship between those three and how they can kind of poke fun at each other. B2 Emo's been with Cassian since the beginning, since Cassian was brought to Ferrix by Marva, right?
Yeah.
So I think there is a really tight kinship there. And I think Cassian has a huge respect for droids, and it's why he will grow such a fondness for K2SO eventually.
And it's funny that both of these droids talk, like in basic. I just saw this. Who voices that computer voice in the cockpit chatting with Stellan Skarsgård? It's David W. Collins.
Oh my gosh.
The Fondor droid. He's the droid voiceover. Sorry, that just
Fondor. Fondor.
Wait,
so are we like assuming that Luthen?
Yeah.
Are we assuming that Luthen Rail is from Fondor potentially? You know what Fondor? You know who Fondor is the home of, by the way?
Give it to me.
Iden Versio. Just saying. Interesting.
Shut up.
Interesting. I wonder if
is it really?
I wonder if Luthen Rail knows Garrick Versio by chance.
Wait. Oh no, you can't say that to me.
Yeah, Fondor is in Battlefront 2. Fun fact.
Yeah,
so again, it is just the captions say
what
Fondor
if Garrick Versio
droid.
shows up? What if Garrick Versio?
I know.
It's not out
Sarah,
of the realm of possibility.
We've been trained. It's not the cameo show.
I know it's not the cameo show, but like, where is Jimmy Smits?
We say that now.
This is not a question. This is a demand.
We say that this week, and then next week when we get the Mon Mothma episode and we see Jimmy Smits back on our screen,
I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he's in it. I don't think he's in it. But I think somebody would have just like looked at me and been like, "LOL," you know?
Yeah. I will say too, like I do think season 2 is going to be chock full of cameos, but I'll be okay with it because by that point the show will have earned it. And if I get more Mads Mikkelsen in my life and Ben Mendelsohn, I will not complain. I will say that.
Right. Not the cameo show, but where is Jimmy Smits? That's okay. That's the training I need to go through.
What I ask myself in every Star Wars project. We are getting him in Tales of the Jedi, so technically we're 2 for 3 this year on Star Wars projects. Well, I guess
do you think Ian McDermott is going to show up in the show?
Maybe. He's already appeared once.
Yeah, I know. They keep paying him.
Do you think, I said this on one of my tweets, I do think we will see Ian McDermott in the Senate. I think they're going to show us like sort of the rebel version of him where he is the healthier version that he presents to the public versus like what he actually looks like. Because in Rebels, when he talks to Ezra, he's like actually like looks like Palpatine of the prequels.
Yeah.
I think that's what we'll see and sort of like the imperial propaganda of the Senate and like, hey, I'm your leader. Things are going great. I definitely don't have a raisin face that's shriveled up from my own lightning.
Unlimited power.
I think that's the Palpatine we will see, which would be kind of cool if we see like a de-aged Ian McDermott, like in prequel era. Like, I don't know. That'd be kind of fascinating.
I'm pro seeing Ian McDermott on screen. He's genuinely just a great actor, and I love him.
Yeah,
he's delightful.
I hooted and hollered when he showed up in Obi-Wan, so I'm ready. Bring it on.
Like, yes, I love it. Like, it's just one of those things. It's like Tamar Morrison, keep paying him. Jimmy Smits, keep paying him. Ian McDermott, keep paying him. That's fine with me.
Please.
They can show up in everything.
Please.
They get the pass to show up in everything. Okay, let's talk about Ferrix just a little bit because I know when we originally saw the Scrapper kind of planet, the junk, we were like, Braca, it's Braca. It's a Braca planet. And it's not. It's a whole new planet that's even more exciting and dynamic and interesting than Braca because, we've only ever seen the big scrapyard side of Braca, really, and like the train that they kind of take to and fro, if I remember correctly, from Jedi Fallen Order. But here, we're not only getting the scrapyard, we're not only getting the town, we're getting the scrapyard and the town that's connected to it, or the city that's connected to it. And there's clearly like farmland, and there's public transportation and rules in place, and a very clear set and built society. It's a blue collar place. It is a functioning place where there is community and space, and it is really refreshing to see. Did you get, what was your vibe when like we kind of started to explore Ferrix?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before, like the people of Ferrix really give it character, but the locations, especially, like the moment I saw Bix's pod racing shop, I was like, yes, it's our first time seeing pod racers on screen in such a long time. Like I think we might have seen some in like Pelimato's shop potentially, or somewhere in The Mandalorian, but like we really get to see her like working on pod racing parts, and I was very appreciative of that. But again, like getting to meet her, and Scout the Trooper tweeted out like Andor is great because we just get to see people talking for the sake of talking, and I think that was really on display during the scene with Cassian and Bix in that shop, because they were just kind of poking jabs at each other. They were talking about, he's like, contact your friend, blah 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 blah, and she's sort of making fun of him throughout the interaction of like, listen, dude, like,
he gets really close to her,
and then he gets really close to her. There's a little bit of tension. Oh, and then, he walks out of the shop and he's like, if you want less complicated women, you better talk to other people, dude. And I was Bix like, is a whole range of emotions and complexities.
And
she's
this
awesome.
Is why
I love her.
Tim is a little shit. Like Bix is confident. Bix knows what's up. She knows what she wants. She knows her position in life. She knows what she can do. And Cassian's like, yeah, that's Bix. And Tim is over here like, that makes me insecure. That makes me insecure. I want to, have all of her attentions. Like, Tim, you little shit.
I turned to you during the screening and I went, he is such a Ruckland. Like, Ruckland from Star Wars Resistance is literally Timon. Like, Ruckland's like, oh, I'm going to rat out the Colossus people. Like, I'm going to turn the Join the Force Order. Tim. So such a Ruckland. I would not be surprised if Ruckland is a descendant of Timon. And I know Timon died.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say they're not related at all. There are just that many jerks in the world.
True. Yeah. The Rucklands don't fall far from the tree, as they say.
Hard truth. Yeah. I'm just mad at him. But also the Bix Cassian tension, they have made out before. Okay. They have gotten close to each other. They have.
Can we talk about sex?
Can we? I mean, I think the show does.
First on-screen acknowledgement of sex in Star Wars. It happened. And it's happened a lot, quite frequently in the books, I will say.
Can I make a really silly observation here?
Yes.
So there's a point, right, when Bix gets to Tim's house and she like takes off her jacket or her shirt or whatever, and I would just like to clearly say that woman is wearing a bra. Bras exist in space. That is all I'm saying. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm saying. I have worn enough bras in my life to know what a bra looks like on a person. Okay. And I could see the part where it connects from like the cup to the strap. There's a particular way that generally looks. And I saw that. Okay. She was wearing a bra. Okay. Bras exist in space. George Lucas, you're wrong. Much respect to George Lucas, but he's wrong.
Context here told Carrie Fisher that there are no bras in space.
There are bras in space.
Yeah.
Send tweet.
Yes.
But yes, to go a little bit further from there, we like get this point where he's like sitting on the chair, like weirdly looking at her.
Like while she's sleeping, like, dude, like go do something with your life.
Tim, he sucks. Okay, he sucks. Okay. And like she gets up and there are not pants on this lady. On this lady.
Elzar Man, Bix, shake hand emoji, no pants on.
I shocked, amazed.
Yeah.
Was like, oh my gosh, this is not Star Wars for the 10-year-old in your life, like.
No. I will say I was starting to get into a cold sweat when Bix took off her jacket. I was like, whoa, like And she was like, how you feeling? He's like, better now. I was like, well, what am I watching? I'm like, did I come to the wrong theater? Like, I don't know what's going on here.
Well, that's how I felt in the first scene when we walk into a freaking brothel.
I know.
I was like, what
and
is
there was
this?
like a Bulio. There's like a Bulio, like a Bulio stripper, like a Bulio
hologram,
like a Bulio species hologram stripper.
That's pretty impressive, actually.
Win the war.
Win the war.
Win the war. God,
I think my impression
give
wins.
it to Rise of Skywalker. Just some great banger quotes. I know we've said it before. It's not our favorite movie, but it's got some quotes.
Anyway,
Holy moly, I
have spent the past entire time we've been talking really just wanting to mention the glove wall in Ferrix, and how this glove wall is like such a centerpiece of like their work and social space, and how, you know, at the end of the day they hang up all of their gloves in a very specific way, and everybody knows which ones are theirs, and they're so colorful, and each one of them is different, you know, different paddings, different colors, fabrics, and I just love that, and I just really wanted to take a moment tonight to say that. Thank you for listening, everybody. That's it. That's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, there's just so much character to Ferrix, and I feel like if they are giving this place character, I have a feeling like every location that we're going to see throughout the show will follow that trend, and I'm so excited to go to Coruscant. We've already seen so many scenes. Like we've seen Mothma on her couch, Mothma in her like cool 50s looking car, like
Mothma in a Senate chamber, Mothma with Luthen. That one thing where the elevator goes to the side and then it goes down.
Yeah. There's so much character. Like Tony Gilroy is like all in on the world building. And again, like you said it earlier, like things that would maybe appear mundane to the Star Wars fan parentheses derogatory, like are actually so critical and so important and so juicy and fun and awesome that I love building out this world during this time period. And I hope we continue to get more of that because it is great. Like it is a good time to be a Star Wars fan. I am drinking the Andor Kool-Aid. I am quite literally up to the throat in Andor Kool-Aid because I'm drinking so much of it. I'm about to throw up Andor Kool-Aid.
I hope you don't, but I'm really just here to say the Time Grappler. Ah! I'm obsessed with him. I really am.
They should do the Rogue One special edition where Tony Gilroy edits in the Time Grappler on the beach, just hitting people with his hammers.
That's not how the Time Grappler works. He's there to tell the time. He's there to tell the time, which he does in a very specific musical pattern using his instrument. And it gives you different tones at different times of day, so you know what time it is. That is the juiciest, most interesting thing I feel like I've ever experienced in Star Wars. And I live at home. I sat my mom. I was like, Mom, watch this. She's like, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, Mom, this is the greatest thing ever. So I'm really just obsessed with the Time Grappler.
It's so good. It's so good.
I'm very, very. Oh, can I just share? We're kind of all over the place now. I'm really sorry. Can I just share a B2 line that just had me hoot and hollering, laughing?
Yeah, please.
Marva says, "You went out ruining your health and reputation with friends of low character." If that's not like the mommest mom thing to say to like a sibling, you know, and I'm going to count like B2 emo is truly part of the family, but like, oh, you know, my parents would be like, oh, Adam again, you know.
I will add one that happens a little earlier, but it's when they're talking about how do people know you're from Kenari, and you know they're making the list of people who would know. And Cassian, you know, he's like, oh, the family members, like, she's like, that doesn't count. And he's like, well, if we're making a list, we're making a list. And she says, well, it's all of your women that I'm worried about. And Cassian goes, oh, come on, please stop. And Marva says, Femi, Carla, Sandrine. There are some names I don't even know. And then B2 in the corner going, Bix. and then Cassian's like, keep Bix's name out of this. She's not involved. Like, I just like, that pretty much confirms that like Cassian's a ladies' man, which understandably, like, have you seen Diego Luna? But I love the fact that he has like, you know, he's been around town having some fun,
living a normal life, you know?
Yeah.
What? One thing we have not mentioned, and I'm so surprised.
Bantha Toy.
Well, first
Canon.
of all, Bantha Toy canon.
He's just like me, Cassian. He's just like me with the Bantha Toy.
that I got for you. The one that. Do you have other Bantha toys?
Yeah. I have like the Funko Pop with Mando on Bantha. Yeah.
Nice. Pro Bantha.
Yeah.
Pro Bantha here. Yes.
Yes.
Bantha toy. Excellent. Brilliant. Beautiful. Great. No complaints. Also, that moment when the big chunky clunky Premox ship or Premor ship comes out of hyperspace and just like boom. Do you want to talk about that? Do you want to talk about that? Because like you had a capital R reaction to that.
I felt aroused by it. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I have not seen.
Too late. We gotta stop the podcasting. He's aroused by the hyperspace.
No, like the way that like, you know, you get the shot of space, you're like, oh, that's pretty nice. And then whoa, and then like it just caught like the biggest, ugliest looking ship you've ever seen in your life jumps out of hyperspace at you. And we're sitting in the third row. I literally grabbed like both of my armrests. I was like, holy shit. And I looked over at Chase, who's from Pink Milk, and we were both like, we looked at each other and we were like, oh my God. Like we both mouthed holy shit to each other because we were really taken aback by the whole situation.
It was incredible. And then I was like, oh my God, it's a launcher ship. All those ships are gonna pop out of there. And they did. And I was like, hee.
Love it. Yeah, that ship, we do love a good chunky big ship like the Colossus.
It's so ugly. I love it.
I want to know the name of the ship too.
To be clear, the Colossus is not ugly. The Colossus is a beauty. No. Nothing can top her. But like this ship is ugly as hell, and I think it's great.
Love
Perfect.
It
no
so
notes.
It's my glup shitto of ships.
Glup shitto shits. Yeah.
It's my glup shippo.
Oh, no. I feel like, you know, like
we've really made a mess here.
Somebody asks, what's your favorite ship? And people either respond like the Millennium Falcon or like Raylo. It's like, what's your glup shippo? You're like, the one ship from Andor. And somebody else is like Ray Rose, you know? Like, I love that.
Oh, God.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, so before we start to wrap up here, can we talk about like Kenari and the flashbacks and all of that for a half second?
How do we miss all of that in this whole conversation?
Yeah, I think that might be a really great way to round out our conversation because it's ultimately where episode 3 ends is Cassian leaving Kenari. Kenari is so fascinating. I love the choice to not show us what the kids on Kenari are saying. And I wonder how that will play into the future storytelling. Like, are we going to find out what Cassian said to his little sister before he left? I'm wondering like what happened to the parents, like where they've been to, and like when the ship crashes. Notably, the scientists on the ship have separatist logo patches on their vests, and B2 says there's a Republic frigate on the way, so we know that this is during the Clone Wars, which is really fascinating. And then also like Cassian seeing his reflection for the first time in the mirror, like and like the reflective glass on board the ship, you know, and he starts hitting. Like, what do you think was like? Why did he have that reaction? Like, why did he start hitting the walls and like getting so upset? And like, what was it about his reflection that kind of sparked that for him?
I think it's a few things. And I know I am completely speculating here, of course. I think his world has been shattered. He sees this mine. I don't know if he's seen the mine before, right? So that's number one. He sees the mine, and then he sees these intruders who, you know, are dead, right? He's seen the death of somebody who is clearly their leader or somebody that they really respect. And then he's seeing his reflection. And they live seemingly in the forests or the woods and live a very outdoors centered, perhaps nomadic sort of lifestyle, who are stewards of that place. And I think his world is just completely shattered because there's the destruction of his world, right? We know that there was an accident, and the question is, did this accident happen before or after the ship crash? Part of me thinks beforehand. We've seen somebody who led the charge in this mission get killed, and then he's seeing his own reflection, something he's probably not used to, something that probably is jarring for him, or is jarring for him because the interior, if you just think about that one shot where we're getting him like climbing up and in, and just like how long and sterile and polished it all is, right? And that's not the world that he is used to. He's used to the woods, nature, color, vibrancy. And this is so not all of that. And I think that, can be very jarring. But I also think it could be him taking out rage for whatever accident occurred and that probably affected his people, his loved ones. Like they're young people. Where are their parents? dead, probably.
Yeah, I have no idea. I would imagine. Yeah, it feels like it's such a tragic situation because his way of life there gets disrupted. And part of me wonders, has he truly had as much of a sense of community as he did on Canary? Why is he going after his sister? Like, why is now the time that he wants to find his sister? I think that's a question that will start to unravel throughout the series. What does his sister mean to him? Like, will we actually see his sister grown up?
Yeah,
Something I wonder.
Is she dead or is she alive? And will we meet her? Those are the questions.
Yeah. And I think Cassian, Andor, the series, is going to be, I think, a journey for Cassian to come to terms with things from his past while also finding a new community within the rebellion. A community of people who are willing to protect what's theirs or what belongs to them, right? Because if we know that the Kassa and his people are natives on that planet, and that planet was taken by the Imperials in a mining disaster, and it was colonized by them, by the Imperials. Likewise, the Imperials are taking over democracy, and they're destroying even more planets like Canary, right? And so the rebellion is an effort to take back the galaxy and put it back into the hands of the people it belongs to, versus like an aristocrat and a dictator. So like, does Cassian find that same sense of purpose that he felt on Canary within the rebellion, right? And does finding his sister or finding out the cause of her death or what she is up to, if she's survived, does that bring him some sort of closure in order for him to let the past go and to move forward and to find more purpose? So there's a lot of moving parts with him, and I'm curious to see how it all plays out.
And I bet you we're gonna find out.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So next week's episode 4. Cannot wait. I've heard really great things.
Mothma. Also, I mean, I just feel like this is the one that's been hyped up since like May, when like Tony Gilroy was like, episode 104 is really going to change how you think about Mothma. And I'm like, great. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I'm wondering, are we going to get Mothma flashbacks? Like, is it going to be like I don't know. It could be like a whole Mothma, Life of Mothma episode. Who knows? Episode 4 is directed by Susanna White, which is interesting. And the episode will be written by Dan Gilroy as opposed to Tony. Okay. So Dan's going to write the next 3 episodes. And Susanna will direct the next 3 episodes. I like how the series has a very clear director-writer duo for like these like story arcs. Very fascinating. Toby Haynes will be back for episodes 8 through 10. So I'm excited. And then Tony Gilroy will write he'll be back for episodes 11 and 12 to wrap up the season. So,
okay. I'll look ahead. I need to warn the people that I'm going to be thirsting on next week's episode. Yeah. And that's it. That's all I need to say is like, I don't know if I've ever thirsted harder on the podcast than when I did when that trailer dropped. And I just really just had a whole rant thirst about my Mothma. So just like, be prepared for that again. If you choose to tune in again on Andor Candor, please do. But like, it's just bound to happen. I know myself. And if this is as Mothma centric as we all hope, yikes for Sarah, folks. Yikes for Sarah. So
yeah,
sorry in advance. Or you're welcome in advance. I don't know. But yeah. So I'm really excited because I think this is going to give us a lot of like really interesting politics. And I love that stuff. So
yeah, I cannot wait. I really cannot wait for next week. We've been talking here for about an hour and 40 some minutes. So much to cover. I feel like there's still so much that we missed too. Yeah. So sorry if we did miss anything that you were hoping we talked about, folks. But I'm sure as the season goes on, we might reflect on some of the things that we did forget to mention. So with that being said, Sarah, did you have any final thoughts on episodes 1 through 3 of Andor?
Star Wars. Great. Love Star Wars. Yeah. Yeah.
Star Wars,
having a great time. Yeah. Feeling good.
I love it when Star Wars.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a reminder, if you haven't already listened to our episode about the premiere of Andor in Hollywood, definitely go check that out. It was tons of fun. We had a great time. Go check out some of our photos on like our Twitter and Instagram too. Such a good time. And I can't believe we're here now a week later. Watching it on our TV screens as many times as we'd like. It's great. Andor's out in the world. People are enjoying it. There seems to be like pretty unanimous praise for it. Not something we often come by in Star Wars fandom. And so it's nice to just kind of have like a unanimous positivity around the show for once. Because,
or at least in our circles, you know, like there's some good vibes. So that's good.
But I feel like even critically, I saw something that like it has the highest, I mean, I take Rotten Tomatoes with a grain of salt. I think it's a terrible system, but it has the highest Rotten Tomatoes score since the premiere of Mandalorian for any Star Wars TV show, which I found interesting, I believe. So, yeah, I think critically acclaimed. I think even outside of circles, people are really, really connecting with it on a deep level. So, so excited. We got 9 more weeks of this. It's going to be a great time.
Yes, so excited, and expect some fun guests on in the future. We're looking forward to chatting with some of our friends around the community as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. If you want to make sure you don't miss any of those episodes, follow the podcast on all of our socials, as well as Sarah and I in those same places to catch all the latest updates, what we're doing, what we're thinking, what we're talking about. You can also follow the podcast. Yeah. It's going to be throughout the season. The thirst never ends here in Star Wars land.
No.
We also encourage you to follow us on any podcast feed that you listen to, so you get all of our episodes automatically right into your feed. And if you'd be so kind, leave a 5-star written review about today's episode if you could. Helps other folks find the show and join the Andor Candor.
We also have a Patreon where tiers start at just $1, and we are eternally grateful, as always, to all of our patrons who help make the show happen. So thanks to Amy, Brian with an I, Brian with the Y, Cheryl, Clay, Danny, Davis, Dylan, Donnie, Huang, Jen, Knights of Ren, Leanne, Levi, Lucy, Lindsay, Rob, Saber Bouquet, Sky Talker, Steven, Travis, Tom, and T. Thank you all very much. And thank you all to everyone who listened through this episode. We appreciate you. Thanks for joining us for Andor Candor.
Yes, absolutely. We hope you tune in for these next 9 weeks. Enjoy the journey with us. Thank you again for your support. And until next time, may the Force be with you always.